Turn off the air first. Let's turn off the air first. Let's turn off the air. It's nothing worse than we start filming and we realize we forgot to turn off the air conditioner. So then halfway through filming, all of a sudden it's like, and we're just like, yeah, so this is Ex Libris. What's up, everybody? My name is Nick Murphy. I'm one half of the Brothers Murphy, and this is Board Game Highlight. Board Game Highlight is a weekly segment where Mike or I take a game off the shelf behind us and we highlight it for you. Now, what highlighting means is that we pop it open, talk about the rules, a little bit of the gameplay, but it's mostly why we love it, why we love getting it to the table, and what makes the game tick a little bit. So this week, we're going to the library and boom! Ex Libris. Ex Libris is a game from Renegade Games, and it's about building the best library, which is a great theme in my opinion. I mean that very sincerely. I'm not being like, great theme, dude. But I mean that. I really like different themes, even if they're kind of bland. And if you set this in a normal library, I'd be like, super cool, that's awesome. But this one is set in a fantasy library, so it's this cool, like, fantasy world where there's like goblins and gnomes and gelatinous cubes, although they can't call them gelatinous cubes because, you know, Gary Gygax will sue. But it's set in this really cool fantasy world with all these fantasy books about like spells and potions and all this stuff. But ultimately, you're just a librarian. You're categorizing, you're alphabetizing, you're trying to make your stack nice and steady so the books don't fall and crush people to death. You're just being a little nerdy librarian, and I love it. I think it's such a cool theme, and I think it's set in such a weird, interesting world and such a good way to go about a game like this. So let's pop this box open, let's get it to the table, and let's talk about why I love it so much. Boom! So now normally when we get to this point, I usually have the game set up as if we're ready to play, and this is actually not how it is right now. This is just kind of showing some of the components of the game, because I think this game, like a lot of Renegade games, is really, really pretty and really just cool in terms of all the different kinds of stuff. So we have the main board up here, and this essentially just, it's kind of honestly mostly a placeholder for a couple different things, but what it does show is at the end of the game all the different things you're going to score for, so they're always out there for everyone to see and read, which is really, really nice. And then you get to pick a library, and these are all the different libraries you can pick from, and each one has its own special ability, has its own special power, and I think that's super, super nice because there's a ton of them, and the most you can play with is 4, and so you're going to have a lot of different variability, at least just in terms of your different libraries in the whole game, and that's really, really nice. Choose a library. You're going to get 2, and then you're going to get to choose one from there, and they're all themed. There are some that are good at like putting books in their shelves, some that are kind of mean, and some that you're really interactive, and some are very much like, I'm secluded, I'm in a little forest library, and I don't want to see anybody. But they're all different, and these meeples right here represent the different libraries. So in a normal game, if you're playing with a basic library, you're just going to get 3 meeples of your color, and these are your workers. It is a worker placement game. I probably should have mentioned that earlier. So you're going to get your workers, and that's going to be it. But if you're playing with a game with the special libraries, you're only going to get 2 workers, and then whatever library you choose, you're going to get a special worker that goes along with that library. So right here, we have the igloo of information. See this little snowman? Well, this snowman meeple, boom, goes along with that. And so whenever you take an action with your special meeple, that's when you get to do your library's like special action, for the most part. And there is a ton. There's 12 different libraries. There's the igloo of information. The literary, you get a wizard. There's a bookworm. Look, it's a little worm. It's a book. And then you have the Volcanic Biblioteca, which is a freaking dope name. New band name called it. The Forest Repository, which is like Bigfoot kicking it in like a tree library, just being like, read books, man. And you have your own little library, you have your own little special power, but it's just, I love the fact that they make it so thematic and make it like, yeah, you're just like, you're all about seclusion and you like this. And ultimately, like the special ability is like a little thing. It's not gonna like greatly change the game. But I don't know, it's a bit of theming through like graphic design and artwork and just stuff like that that I think makes it really, really cool and really awesome. And so many of these libraries I just want to be in. Like I want to go to a junkyard and just find like a trash golem there hanging out with all sorts of books. Wow, a library in a junkyard. Who would have thought this would be so charming? Oh, I love this book. Oh, I am Jackie Chan. Who would throw this out? It's amazing. Oh, Look at him. He's beautiful. Or go hang out with the witch in her sweet swamp library. This library sucks. Why would you put this here? Water and books do not mix. So everyone's gonna get their own library, and then there's a whole bunch of locations that look like this. They're the same size as all the libraries, and there's a whole big stack of them right here. These are all spots where you're gonna place your workers and such. So you're gonna have different locations, and then you have finally all the library cards. There's these two big old stacks of cards, and these all have unique books on them. I think there's over 500 unique book titles. And it just looks so cool. It's so unique and specific and just awesome, and I love it so much. And so now we'll get into the gameplay, but I just wanted to kind of show off everything in the game and talk about, like, look, if you want to do like good production, this is a good way to do it. Like, this is just so well thought out, and everything is so specific and cool, and I just love it. Okay, so this is like the actual setup. Each person's gonna take their library and put it with their people and stuff, and they're gonna get a couple cards, and these cards again have different books on them and different letters and such, because again, things have to be in alphabetical order. So on top of having a library and your own little special ability, each person is also gonna get one of these, and these are different focuses essentially. So this is like what your library is like known for. So this library is known for like monster manuals, and this one's corrupted codices, historical volumes, spells and potions, reference texts, and fantastical fictions. These are the 6 different genres of books that are in the game. So every book on here has a little genre. You can see I got the purple ones or the green ones. The purple here are like spells and potions, and the greens are these fantastical fictions here. So everyone's going to get one of these secretly, and on your board here it says your focus right here on the corner. So you're basically going to look at it and be like, oh, I'm this one, and then you're going to put it over here face down so no one knows what your focus is. And then there's going to be a prominent works, which goes right here, and then a banned books, which goes right here. And so your focus at the end of the game for each book in your library that matches your focus, you're going to get 2 points for. But then there's the prominent works. Whoever has the most of this genre, in this case fantastical fictions, at the end of the game is going to get 15 points. Second place will get some, and the third place will get some. And then banned books, this is a book that people don't want. People don't want spells and potions, because spells and potions are evil. So in this game, every spell and potion book you have in your library will give you -1 point at the end of the game. So you have your libraries, and then you have your locations, which are out here in the middle. You're always going to have each round a location equal to the amount of players. In this case, there's 2 of us. So we'll have 2 locations out, and all the different locations do certain things. Sometimes they let you just draw cards. Like the Diviner's Hut here lets you draw 1 card for every assistant you have played, and then you take the first player token, which is this one, which means you'll get to be the first player. But basically, if I had already placed this assistant here, and then this assistant here, and then I played the Diviner's Hut, I would get to draw 3 cards because I've then placed 3 assistants. And I'm not going to explain what all the different locations do. There are 18 of them. I think there's a whole bunch of them. They all do different stuff, and they all have different amounts of spots. There are workers, so like this one you can have 4. This one you can only have 1, which makes sense. But then on top of that, you can see on our own libraries, there are 3 spots, and you can always put a worker, boom, on your spot. And going to your library is essentially doing kind of like a basic action. You can draw a card, or what's called shelving a card. And I'll go into what that means in a moment, but essentially you're all going to be getting the new locations out. You're going to be placing all your people and getting cards or putting cards in your actual library, because cards that are in your hand are not actually on the shelf in your library yet. You have to put them there, and that's what shelving a card means, is you're putting it actually in your library down on the table. So once we place all our people and boom, 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 they're all over the place, yay. Then we come to the end of the round. At the end of the round, what's going to happen is you're going to take the lowest numerical location. In the corner here, the top corner, there is a number. The Diviner's Hut here is number 1. It's always out first. And that is going to come up here to the permanent locations spots. So here, there's always going to be a permanent location, and then whatever else is there all gets wiped and gets thrown away and may get shuffled back in later. And then next round, we bring out 2 new locations. These are always shuffled randomly. And then we go again, and at the end of the round, the lowest numerical one, in this case there's 6 and there's 9, the lowest one will go here. So throughout the game, you then start having more and more options of different things you can do. But one thing I think that's very interesting is the locations go up, I think, to 18. And the higher the number on them, the better the location is. You can usually do more cool stuff, manipulate your shelves and your hand and all the different cards in a better way. But it's always the low one that gets put in the permanent location. So a lot of times those big, awesome locations are gonna be there for one turn and then they're gone. And I find that to be interesting. I think that's a really, really cool way to go about that because there's always more and more options, which is great, but the really good options are probably only gonna be there once. And so on that turn, you're like, gosh, what do I do? You only ever have 3 workers in the entire game. You'll never get more. So do I do that big one now because it probably won't come back, or do I try and spread them out? By the end of the game, you'll have 6, 7, 8 locations, even more if you're playing like a 4-player game, and it gets really hard to decide which ones to choose to do. And that goes to show a great worker placement game. I really, really love that. So that's most of the game, but let's talk a little bit about making your own library. Each person is gonna have their own library, which consists of books being put down orthogonally like this and stuff, and you put them, boom, and you make a nice little pretty library. But there are certain things you have to do when it comes to shelving cards, which is taking a card from your hand and then putting it into your library face up on the table in front of you. So when it comes to shelving your cards, there's a couple different things you have to think of. For the first one, you can basically just put it down, bang, bang. But your library shelf can only be 3 shelves high. But also putting something right down here is probably not a good idea because at the end of the game, right here, it says shelf stability. You're gonna get points for having a really stable shelf. What a really stable shelf means is you want it to be as square or as rectangular as possible. This is a really secure shelf. This is square, it's boom, it's hard to push over. This, on the other hand, is not a very secure shelf. This one is teetering all over the place. So at the end of the game, you're gonna get points for your biggest square in your library. Doing one of these. Library Vogue. Beow, 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 beow. Library Vogue. Vogue, 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 Vogue. So in this situation, if I had this shelf at the end of it, my points would be 2, because my biggest rectangle is here. Boom. That's it. But if I had nothing beneath it, my biggest rectangle would be this, and so it would be 5. So that's one thing you also have to keep in mind is like when I'm placing things, I need to make sure I'm trying to place them in like a block. I want them in a square because at the end of the game, the biggest square is gonna be worth a lot of points. And the square, again, has to start from the bottom shelf. So you're constantly having to think about that. Not only are you trying to get the different categories, like, oh, I wanna make sure my focus is monster manuals, so I wanna make sure I have a lot of red books because those are monster books, but then you're like, oh, but I also have to make sure my shelf is square. Okay, monster manuals and square, good to know. But there's even more stuff you have to think about. One thing that librarians love is alphabetizing things. Alphabetizing things is very important in a library. If things were all haphazard or done by like color or something like that, it'd be very confusing. All the blue books are over there, all the red books are over there, black books are on the ceiling, and yellow books are in the basement. Go find Lord of the Rings. Does anyone see my glue? My good sniffing glue? Mike, you see my good sniffing glue? So on top of having all a bunch of different books and a whole bunch of different categories and stuff like that, all the cards here have a different letter on them. And then all the books in that shelf start with that letter. But you can also see that there's also a number here. So like F, 6 of 6, or S, 5 of 10. Or in this situation, we have 2 Bs right here. We have B, 8 of 10, and B, 9 of 10. The 10, the second number, in this case, the 10, means there are 10 B cards in the game. And that is important because you have to go alphabetically, but you also have to go numerically. So basically, when you're shelving cards, you have to go in alphabetical order. And so you have to go like B, and then something like a C, and then an O, and then an X, and then a Z. This is totally fine because it's in alphabetical order. There's nothing out of place. Now, this isn't a great idea to put them like this because there's nothing after Z, and there's only A before B. So essentially, this is as big as I can make my shelf. So in this case, I have a B, a C, and an O, and let's say this is my top shelf. If I wanted to put one down here, it would have to come after O. So I could put something like, I could put something like a P down here, and then P, and then, you know, Q, R, S, T. And then I could put X, and then Z, and then this is totally fine because it's B, C, O, P, X, Z. And that's totally okay. But again, if I wanted to add a third shelf down here, or a third shelf up top like this, I have to make sure it comes before this B or after this Z, which probably wouldn't happen. So on top of having to think of this shelf stability and try to get your own focus, plus trying to get the prominent works focus while not trying to get the banned books focus, you have to think of alphabetical, as we just talked about. You got to go A through Z, A through Z. So it's one more thing to think about. When you're going to different locations, you're picking up books, you're like, okay, I need these genres, but I also need A's. I need A's, because I have a bunch of B's, and the only thing I can put before that is A's. And you're trying to collect these different letters because they need to be able to fit into your shelf. But on top of that, once you have cards right next to each other, unless there is a location, and there's like one or two, I believe, that allow you to move cards. Once they're in your shelf, they're there. So you can get really stuck. But on top of having to go alphabetically, you also have to go numerically. So you can put two letters of the same type right next to each other, but they have to be in numerical order. So that also is a big thing. If it's a letter that has a lot of different cards, like a B has 10 different cards, there's 10 B cards in there, it's probably not a good idea to put a B1 right next to a B10. Whereas something like Z isn't that bad because there's only 2 Z cards in the entire game. So if you get the Z2 of 2, you probably don't need to try and like wait out for the Z1 of 2, because the chance of you getting it are pretty slim. And if you don't get it, it's only one card you could have put in there. So you're gonna keep doing round after round, bringing out new locations, bringing out new cards, and you're gonna be putting stuff in your library all fancy, like lots of A's, lots of Z's. So you're gonna keep doing that until someone has a certain amount of cards in their library. For a 2-player game, it's 16. For a 3-player game, it's 14. For a 4-player game, it's 12. I'm pretty sure. Let me double check. Nailed it. And then one thing we didn't talk about, this one more thing to think about, you have your categorical variety bonus. Your categorical variety bonus is whatever is your lowest category. That's not including the banned books. The banned books don't count for this. But your lowest category of books, your lowest genre, that's not the banned books, you're going to take however many of those books you have and you're times them by 3. So the categorical variety is interesting because, again, you can't focus on just one thing. You kind of have to focus on everything. And then on top of that, focus on alphabetizing and shelf stability and all this other stuff. And that's more or less how you play Ex Libris. It is a really great, really thinky game. The game looks great. We talked about that earlier. You know I love the look of it. There's so much depth to just like the look and the art of it that it's amazing. But then on top of that, it's a really great worker placement game. And there's so much to think about and so much to plan for. And it's just rough on the dome. But it's so good and it's so meaty and I love it so much. And it's a game that you wouldn't expect to be that way. The only main complaint I have, and this is a pretty common complaint, everyone complains about that with this game, and I think it's a very fair complaint, is the text on all of these locations and on all of your libraries is very small and basically impossible to read. Like this here is an entire paragraph. If you're playing a 4-player game and you're all the way over here, I literally can't read that. It's just a jumble of white words. You constantly have to pick things up and read them. I don't think it's like devastating. It doesn't affect me too much, but it is a little frustrating when you're just kind of like, what does that one do? What does that one do? What does that one do? It's just a little much, but that's pretty much the only bad thing I really have to say about it. Otherwise, I love pretty much every single thing about this game. So that's going to be it for our board game highlight of Ex Libris, a really, really wonderful game. Please, down in the comments, let us know what game you want us to highlight next. We got a whole bunch of games behind us. We want to talk about them all, but we really want to know which one you want us to talk about. And please remember to like and share this video. If this is your first time with us, we're the Brothers Murph. Please give us a subscription. So if you enjoy what you're watching or you enjoy the Brothers Murph, please consider supporting our Patreon. Anything at all really, really helps, even if it's just $1. If not, don't worry about it. Nothing's behind paywalls for us, but it does help a lot if you can afford it. So that is going to be it. And you have been checking out Ex Libris with me, Nick, here on Board Game Highlight. Have a good one. How's it going? Just want to let you know that we are sponsored by Restoration Games. Restoration Games make wonderful, wonderful games from the past and restore them for you. And everything we film, everything we play is on top of Game Toppers, which is a really wonderful way to upgrade your gaming experience. Go check out Restoration Games and Game Toppers LLC for more information. All right, cool. I feel like I need that one. Out. Okay. Nick! What is it, big face disheveled Nick?
Nick, I want to let you know I really like French toast.
Cool. Cool. Thanks for letting me know.
Nick,
Yeah.
get rid of Mike.
What?
What? Why would you say that?